Good morning.
Hi.
Morning, Brady.
Morning, Brady.
Well, I think we've got everybody, and it's pretty much 8:30. And we're live even. Wow. Bada bang.
That's the announcement.
That's as good as a gavel there.
Thank you.
Good morning. I'd like to call this regular meeting of the Cook County Board of Commissioners to order on this Tuesday, December 14th, 2021 at 8:32 a.m. Please rise and join us in saying the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
You arrived just in time.
Sorry about that, Molly.
Oh.
Are there any adjustments to the agenda this morning? Looks like not so much. And so I'll entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
Motion to approve.
Thank you, Commissioner Starling. We have a motion. Is there support?
Swallowson supports.
Thank you, Commissioner Swallowson. We have a motion and support. Any further discussion? Hearing or seeing none. All in favor? Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion passes unanimously. Moving on to our public comment period. This is a time anyone from the public can address the board. I don't see anyone in the audience. Have we received any written communications from anybody?
Mr. Chairman, I have not.
Okay. Then I will close the public comment period and move on to the consent agenda. Are there any items a commissioner would like to pull from the consent agenda to discuss further? In which case, I would entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Sullivan?
I move to approve the consent agenda.
Thank you, Commissioner Sullivan. We have a motion. Is there support?
Swallowson supports.
Thank you, Commissioner Swallowson. We have a motion and support. Any further discussion? Hearing or seeing none, I'll call the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you. We have our public hearing scheduled for 9:30, so got a ways to go before that. It looks like we're too quick here for item 5 as well. So we can move right on to item 6. The Auditor, Brady Powers.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So this item is Commissioner salaries and schedule of per diem payments. The law states that you cannot, accept change in salary unless it's approved the prior year. So this would be this week or next week would be the last chance to make a change. And the state auditors recommend that we affirmatively make that decision, even if there's no change, at least to make a motion and actually by resolution. So we've done that by practice in recent years, not required. But so this is just a request to see if the commissioners wish to make a change or affirm no change at this time.
All right. This is somewhat of a hot button issue in my mind. And we haven't had a whole lot of discussion about it, and so I don't know how the board feels with salaries, and you know, we certainly want to have more of a process here. But, you know, a couple things I'd want to point out is just there hasn't been a change since 2003.
Right.
So that's pretty incredible. And you know, I think we've probably all been doing a little bit of poking around to other commissioners in other counties just to see how we compare. And it's interesting because I think, well, from what I've seen and gathered, it seems like we're not too far off from a lot of counties. And all the commissioners say they need to do something about that, that I've talked to. Sorry, all is maybe a slight exaggeration, but certainly the vast majority. You know, some of the thoughts I'd have is like, I would like to address this. I would like a more thorough process if we're going to have a very significant change, but I would like to at least make a step in this direction. But how we do that is a hairy enough discussion that my expectations aren't high. But I hope we can talk about it. And so, yeah, I just want to know what other commissioners' thoughts are.
Mr. Chairman, if I could just add briefly, I did receive an email yesterday afternoon from the Association of Minnesota Counties. They were surveying all the county administrators regarding this very question, what the commissioner salaries are and what recent increases have been. And so clearly Cook County is not the only county that's grappling with this issue. So I just wanted to share that.
Thank you. Commissioner Storley.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, since we just came off the conference, I was able to visit with a few people that I knew. I didn't approach anybody I didn't know. And the only thing that we did talk about was that our meals, you know, it's hard to get a dinner for $15. You know, if there's any tweaking we want to think about there. Most of the time all our meals are furnished. But there were a couple of times that they weren't, and that was just because of where we were staying and so on and so forth. So I know some were concerned about the fact they don't even turn in their meal because it isn't worth it, you know. You're going to spend at least $25, you know, for anything kind of substantial for an evening meal, and $15 is allowed, so.
Yeah.
You know, but most of them felt that their per diems, some of them only go on a basic salary, and then they take off how many meetings they go to and how many boards they attend, and so it's a mix in the state. But I'm glad that AMC maybe will put something together with our input to help us, you know, sort this out. That would be fair and just to the work that's being done by all of the commissioners.
Commissioner Storley, just to respond to your comment about meals, for example, I think that's something as county-wide we need to look at, not just for commissioners. And I would think the Personnel Committee and the Budget Committee would be appropriate places to dive into that, because any of our employees that go to a conference or some type of training are going to experience the same thing. So I'd like that to be addressed at a larger level than just commissioners.
Yeah, and we have talked a little bit about it. And I believe it was at the time Commissioner Dishaw who brought up, why don't we just use the GSA rate? And
Yes.
That seems like, you know, a pretty straightforward, simple way to go. And I think we normally talk about this. Do we normally talk about it in January? Is that, or is it just kind of whenever it's brought up?
Yeah.
December or January, I think.
Oh, for the meal, for setting the meals and the mileage for the.
The mileage, we typically just set it at the federal rate, and the rate change, then we simply just put it into our forms.
Right.
I don't know.
So that's what needs to be adjusted, because they aren't at the federal level.
Well, the meals aren't, but the mileage
Right.
is.
Mileage
The
is, right.
And that should come out in the next week or so.
Okay. And so, yeah, we normally update that in
And then
January.
we'll state it at the January meeting.
So in the past, we've had meal reimbursement and mileage reimbursement as separate
Right.
separate issues, and so one suggestion is to tie it to that GSA rate, so, so I'm very open to that, and I don't know if we want to address that in January, or if we want to address it, now or next week is our, kind of our options, but, I guess we could, it'd probably be helpful for that conversation to kind of run some numbers as to, just so we're aware of the impacts there, to know what that comes out to, the difference, you know, so maybe that would be a better conversation in January if that makes sense, or am I thinking backwards? on
Well,
this?
I'm sorry.
Commissioner
You might
Hawkins.
have going to be saying the same thing.
Well, I was just going to say,
It affects the budget, right? Or the-
well, it would be a little bit hard to do because the last couple of years, we've had a pandemic and people have not been traveling as much, and so those data would be skewed. I mean, you know, and I guess just my 2 cents, this is a pretty standard practice. In agencies and local governments that I've worked for, they use the GSA rates for per diem and mileage. And so, and that's why GSA sets this up, and that's why a lot of local governments use it. And so to me, there's nothing controversial about it. It just seems like the right thing to do.
So do we need to do a policy change to make both meals and mileage done on the federal level, or can we do that by motion?
Well, I think we can do it by motion,
Okay.
and we could make that policy by motion. So we can do both. Commissioner Hawkins, please.
Well, I'm just wondering how this affects the subsequent item on our agenda.
Right.
Yep. Yep.
So, I mean, I think we should update our meal reimbursement, but we also should understand the impact that has on our levy.
And so I think we should, you know, exclude the last couple years from our, you know, for impacts, and maybe just ask if we can run the numbers before the pandemic, as if we had these adjustments made to whatever the current GSA rate. Does that make sense?
It's going to be a very rough estimate.
Okay.
Because we don't have account numbers that just separate meals. Meals and lodging,
I see.
travel are all in one account number. So it would take a lot of work to get you really accurate figures. So it's going to be an estimate.
Is it a,
It would mean actually, like in your case, it would mean pulling out all the meal reimbursement
Yeah.
vouchers for those past years, and some of those are in the basement.
well, yeah, so there may not be all the value there for such a rough estimate, and then when you consider the amount of effort it might take, I mean,
But you can, you know, we make rough estimates all the time, so,
like every day.
yeah,
Informed estimates.
yes,
Yeah,
informed.
I like that.
Well, do you think you could put together an informed rough estimate
I'll
for,
do my best.
would next week be?
Yeah,
Okay, yeah.
That would be great. It would make more sense to, I think as Commissioner Hawkins said, have that information before we
Are
make a
those-
decision.
I've not seen those rates before, I've only heard about them. So do they vary by region?
No.
And things like that?
I think there's a standard rate.
Yeah.
When we were in Grand Portage, we just pulled it off the government website.
Which government?
It was federal, thank you.
Just, I mean, a particular website? I mean, I could just Google GSA.
Yeah, I think you can Google it.
And I thought there were different rates for different regions.
There are.
Yeah.
Okay.
But
Yeah, even
I don't
with-
have any experience with it, so.
Yeah, even within states. I mean, Duluth may have a slightly different reimbursement rate than, say, the cities do.
Yeah, that's
Interesting.
all I'd really be looking for, because that's where the majority of it's gonna be,
Okay.
and just get a sense of what the difference is.
Okay.
All right.
Well, so there's that. Thank you, Commissioner Storley, for bringing that up. And just look for input from other commissioners as far as salaries and per diems are concerned. Commissioner Hawkins.
I have a question about our other elected officials and how do we approve those salaries outside of contracts?
Yes.
Right.
So when we enter these, the contracts with the collective bargaining units, one of the items that's talked about is the COLA adjustment. And then anyone who is not in the collective bargaining unit is a separate conversation, depending on where the organization's standing is with finances and what are, what's going on, such as a pandemic or whatever, just for factors on how those are adjusted. So it is a separate conversation, but often follows the collective bargaining unit rates.
And so.
And those
the-
positions are classified within our job classification system.
So in our proposed levy budget here, those positions are supposed to be getting a 2.5% COLA. Is that correct?
That is correct. That's how that works, yeah.
And I guess, I'm not saying yet, but I kind of think all elected officials should be similar and not some treated differently. So I was doing the numbers on a 2.5% COLA for county commissioners, and what is it, like $3,800. Then looking at our budget and budget to actual numbers. I'm just bringing that up for discussion. Why do we treat some elected officials differently than others?
And to clarify, that's $3,800 for all 5 of us.
Correct.
Oh, total, yeah, okay.
Right.
Well, we 5 have not yet treated some differently. In the past, I believe, and Commissioner Storley could probably help me understand better, or Brady, or whoever has more experience than me. I think it's just those positions are treated differently because they are basically working 9 to 5 in the office in the building.
Full-time positions.
Yeah, yeah, and I agree with you. I think it makes sense to have those adjustments be similar for all the elected officials or all the supervisory positions. And so I like that approach. That hasn't been done these last 19 or 18 years.
Yeah.
But that's kind of the route I think makes sense moving forward. And it doesn't accomplish all of what I think needs to happen, but I think it's a very good first step to kind of set that and get that in motion. Commissioner Swalson.
I think it's the easiest step to take to start to adjust what we currently have and start to move that forward in line with what's happening with inflation or whatever metric we choose to use with that. And I would agree using a similar one for, all your supervisory staff, that type of thing, that starts to fall in line with it. And then it gives you the opportunity to sit back and see what does the information from the AMC review give us on the larger picture, right? Because then you have, it's just like our pay study type of thing, right? Where you start, it's not going to be as detailed or in-depth, but it gives you a sense of where do you stand in conjunction with others. But when you have something that is just a set value and it goes forward for 18 years, you've lost the value of it over time, even though, thank goodness, for several years we've had a very steady, inflation rate.
But it's still inflation.
It is. It is.
Yeah.
Not that I'm feeling bad about it because, you look at it from the part-time position and then the adjustments for the per diems and that type of thing that go along with it, but I agree that it does start to lose value for those coming in downstream if it just stays stagnant for too long a period of time. Then it's people want to do it for their service in their communities, that type of thing, but if they're looking at it as also as part of their livelihood moving forward, then it would be a detractor.
You brought up an interesting point too, just as far as the wage study, or the comp study is concerned and classification. One of the kind of regrets from the previous study was just that the commissioners were not involved, the commissioner's salary was not included in that study, and I thought that was a really interesting concept, so that's just something that I don't remember we as a board have explicitly talked about.
We have not had that discussion,
Right.
but I hadn't thought of it, but you're right. It is something that you could put into that mix.
Yeah, and that would be another data point for us to think about, so, yeah. Heads up there.
Definitely on my radar, and I would just say, I regret that this issue didn't come onto my radar sooner because, I think it is, it defies logic that your pay would stay constant for going on 20 years. Most people would not work under those conditions. And so I think it's high time for us to address this, and I agree. I mean, I think putting in, assigning a COLA to the commissioner's salary that's commensurate with whatever we end up with, whatever we end up negotiating with the unions would make a lot of sense, but there's a much bigger conversation to be had to make up for that almost 2-decade deficit.
Yeah, and per diems, that's a separate issue again now, and in my impression from kind of the informal discussions I've been having with fellow commissioners at the conferences is that we're on the higher end of things there. We are further away, so if we have meetings, in Virginia or Duluth, there is certainly a larger time commitment there. And so one of the ideas that I like is having an in-county, out-of-county, or maybe a distance sort of thing, almost similar to mileage. But I don't have anything specific in mind there. But again, I just thought this is a good opportunity for us to talk about it and brainstorm a little. Anyone's thoughts there. There's also been discussion just about the virtual side of things, like if a per diem should be less if it's a virtual meeting. It just gets really tricky because some meetings are virtual or not. Some are 45 minutes. You can knock one out. That's rare, but it happens, at least in my experience. To an hour, to 2 hours, to 2.5 or 3. Yeah, and all those are the per diem, and I believe that's statute, right, Brady? We can't mess with that part of it. But are there different metrics we can use to determine different per diem rates, or is it just that's per diem and that's per diem?
We've had multiple per diem rates. We had an in-county, out-of-county years ago. And it may have been as much, it may have been 50 and 75. It varied between the 50, 75, and 100. But, yeah, that was the only variation, as I recall.
And is it legal or practical to do like the length of meeting per diem?
I think it'd be difficult
Yep.
to be able to
How would you
show the
document?
management or from the audit perspective, how are you controlling that? How do you validate that?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And
Yep.
you need to always look at that aspect too, because
Yep.
then the question comes up of just how well are you actually controlling things and monitoring to ensure that compliance. I don't know how you do that.
And also, it doesn't get to the fact that whether the meeting is 45 minutes or 4 hours, that it's also the preparation you do for that meeting.
True.
Correct.
True.
Yeah.
Yep. Very good points. Appreciate the discussion.
And probably the most, one practical way to deal with that is just to share the different types of meetings which I think you do pretty well already.
Mhm.
Everybody has probably a share of the different length types of meetings.
Yeah.
Oh, distribution.
Distribution.
Yeah,
that's what I'm
yeah.
trying to say.
Well, well, there's some discrepancies there, I would say. After my first year, I had to make a decision like, okay, am I gonna take more meetings on to try to fill my role as commissioner more, or am I gonna try to scale back and kind of do minimal meetings that's allowable so I can continue my own business, my self-employment, to try to make things work. And so that's still out of balance, I would say, but I'm going back and forth about what works best and what kind of impact I can have as a commissioner. And so, I'm still figuring that out. But I'm not, when we had only 4 commissioners, there was, a little bit skewed distribution too, and then I know Commissioner Swalson has taken on more, and I appreciate that greatly to help, but I tried to hold on to the ones I had to try this this path of attack, but I think the jury's still out there.
You have to make
So.
that decision before January.
Yeah.
Now, my thought is, if you're saying right now, based on your discussions, that the per diem rate appears to be fair, let's just put it that way, comparatively speaking, unless you really feel the need to make an adjustment on that, I would focus more on if there's something you want to do with the overall, tie the salary piece of that. And it's always easier to do adjustments, a little bit at a time, and then look and see with the effects and if it's getting you where you need to be, or this type of thing. If you make it more complex, it'll be just that, more complex.
Yeah, and I don't have a strong sense about the per diems because of, as far as their fairness. When we're comparing other counties,
Yeah.
That's one thing, but then I just think if I'm comparing my time to how else I would be spending my
Okay.
time, then it's
Okay.
kind of like,
Well,
whoa,
that's
so there's
fair.
lots of,
That's
but
fair.
my time is different from, our situations are all different,
Sure.
and so that's why I'm just really
see.
appreciating this discussion,
Yeah.
is to get a feel where everyone's at and what we think would be best for the organization and the position of commissioner versus just us individually. So that's what I'm trying to gain perspective on, is what's best for the board. Yes.
And we're unique in this county in that we only have 3 townships, and they're all in my end. So, attending those meetings too is extra, but I don't claim anything on it because I need to know what's going on. They need to know what's going on from the county. So that's our unusual situation.
That's a very good point, and I think we should talk more about that when we're doing our committee assignments in January. I think that's a very important representation, and I don't know that I feel good about you not claiming per diems for those. I think there's a lot of validity there to do that, but we can talk
can
more
talk,
about that in
sure.
January if we're willing or open to that. But I
I
think there's
think
there's
Brady
lots to talk about there.
Yeah, Brady and Molly would need to weigh in, but it is one of those that you generally, I know you need to, put that on your list of items, i.e. that or committees or something, I think, to be able to start to call that out as far as our policy goes for.
Yep. Yeah, we can do that. That's what we'll do in January,
Yeah.
but I just think it's worth talking more
But
about.
I agree, I think it's,
Yeah.
they're as valid as many of the committees that we attend. For sharing of information and on both directions.
And it does take Commissioner Storley a lot of time. She comes to planning and zoning meetings because of that and is highly involved in areas that the rest of us would not be because of that lack of township, so.
Yeah, that's a very good point. Thank you, Commissioner Storley. And of course, I'm just trying to work through everything. And per diems and salary, they tie together. So if we're attending more meetings, that's good to be more involved, and then if you claim per diems, then maybe salary doesn't need to be adjusted as much. But I feel like there's kind of an ebb and flow of qualified meetings, different boards and different commissioners have had different priorities with to what extent a commissioner should be or should not be involved into what various organizations. So that's a whole nother aspect of it. So in conclusion, I don't have a conclusion.
Well, it seems like, we feel like being fair, like other elected officials, looking at that COLA increase is reasonable. We have Brady coming back with some data, some information for us next week. So I guess I would recommend that we look at the issue next week when we have more information, and in the meantime, be thinking about all these items that we've discussed, because next Tuesday will be the time that we have to make our decision.
Last chance there. Are there any other aspects that we can think of now to consider for next week? Talked about meals, but so we'll consider that. I suspect the AMC data will not be available by next week.
No, I would not expect that.
It's funny because I feel like I often hear of this effort from AMC, but never hear the result. It's like an ongoing. It's funny.
Yeah.
It really, But hey, Amanda.
Good timing.
Okay. Well.
And then clearly, we need to look at that near 20-year period where there was no change, and discuss that perhaps in a separate meeting in January.
Yeah, I think that's a larger discussion.
Yeah, you just
Yeah,
need more
that's a
data
much
to be able to
bigger-
make an adjustment on that,
Yeah.
if you feel you need to, but I think you start to close, at least you're not losing further if you're able to
Yes.
tie a COLA, but just like with the rest of the items, we need to see what effect would that have on our overall, levy discussion, because we need to be able to set that levy, and I would feel uncomfortable being able to do that without having input on it.
I think probably we're all on a similar page there.
And clearly, with the end goal that our board should represent our community, and right now, can everyone in our community accept the salary that we're currently receiving? Does that prohibit or exclude people from serving? And that's my bigger question. I want to make sure we reflect our county and all of its residents.
Yeah, that's a very strong point. It's good, thank you for that reminder, because that's essentially where my perspective comes from too, is just making sure the commissioner's salary is enabling enough for anyone in our community to be able to run, to afford to run. And I'm not certain that's the case at all, but it's a larger discussion we can have next year.
I would like to echo that. As a person who quit a job to take this job, which I am having lots of fun at, but I took a pay cut to do this because I could afford to, with the intention of maybe getting a part-time job to supplement my income. It would be extremely hard to have a part-time job around my schedule right now. And I would be working for somebody else every weekend, because that's the only time.
Well, and then would you read your board packet?
So I agree. I would love to see more young people run for office, and I just want to make sure that we are not prohibiting or stifling input.
Very good. Well, so I think, what are we going to do? Table this till next meeting? Very good.
We could make that official.
I'm entertaining that, yeah.
Mr. Chairman, I would propose that we, or make a motion that we table this item until we have further information from the auditor during our next meeting next week.
Thank you, Commissioner Swalson. I have a motion. Is there support?
Sullivan supports.
Thank you, Commissioner Sullivan. We have a motion and support. Any further discussion? Hearing or seeing none. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Same sign. Motion to table passes unanimously. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, is there any additional information that you would like me to gather? And should we, Brady, are you pretty clear on what we need?
I know what I'm going to look for.
He's going to be digging through files in the basement.
Yeah, I just want to make sure we have everything that you all need for next week,
Yeah.
so.
Well, you know about the meal side of things, our request there. As far as the salary is concerned, my take on it was that we're looking at that assumed COLA increase. And so if you could provide numbers for us on that too, that would be helpful. Is there anything else beyond those two items? I think the bigger stuff is going to be punted for next year.
Yeah.
So that should be, I mean, the meals does sound like a little bit of hassle, but the COLA should be pretty simple. And I think Commissioner Hawkins did an estimate already, so.
Well, yeah, that was a high estimate, so
Okay.
I would like Brady's numbers on that, but I also know how to dig through the files downstairs if you need any.
You do.
Okay.
All right.
Well then, we can move back to item 5, if we may. Yeah. We have 5A, the 2021 Cook County AIS Program Summary. We have,
Good morning, Mr. Chair.
good morning,
fellow
Amanda.
morning.
Commissioners, Administrator Yorkie, Auditor Brady, good morning. So I'm here to present the summary of this year's AIS program and then also request a motion to adopt the updated Aquatic Invasive Species Prevention Plan. Well, I'll go through what was presented in the packet first. That's the metrics report that was submitted to the DNR as statute requirements for the AIS prevention aid. So it goes through a summary of the money that was used for this program this year, the amount of people that were doing AIS work within the county, and then the partnerships that were created and maintained, the funds that were distributed and contributed, given to other partners, and then the money that we received from other organizations, communities that were engaged, different events that were held, money spent on advertisements, children that received targeted information about AIS prevention, and the summary of the watercraft inspection program. The money spent, the number of hours, the number of inspections, how many accesses, and 100% of all watercrafts were in compliant with AIS laws. So all of them had their boats plugged and cleaned and no mud or plants on their boats. Law enforcement supported. We have been very blessed to have a strong relationship with the Sheriff's Office. We have an ongoing grant that given to the deputies, and they conduct overtime inspections for us. The monitoring that was conducted, we did 31 lakes with 37 detections for types of spotting water fleas or rusty crayfish, and there was one new infestation that was found in Seagull Lake. It was rusty crayfish. So SAG has rusties, and it was presumed to be infested for a long time. So they finally made it all the way to the landing. And then it breaks down the spending summary for the budget, how much money was spent per category on outreach, admin, inspections, and enforcement, and advertising. And the next page is the success story. This is a fun little blurb for people. So last year, in 2020, rusty crayfish were found in Caribou Lake off Lutsen Trail. And they were coming in at the Bigsby Lake Inlet. That's the opposite end of the lake from the public access. And this year, the COLA members, with my help, trapped extensively in that inlet area for rusty crayfish, and they removed over 1,000 rusties. So that's a success story that they're working hard, and it's good for the public comment period coming up for them, for AIS. So hopefully with management of intense harvesting, we'll be able to keep the rusty crayfish from really expanding further into that lake. Then I have the AIS maps that I partnered with Lake County. So one side has lake, one side is Cook, and it has the lakes that are infested highlighted with what they're infested with and just all the information. And then there's the table of the watercraft inspection data, how many hours were spent at each lake, how many inspections were done. And the table underneath that is just the summary of the last 6 years of inspection data. Yeah. And then there's 2 pie charts that show watercraft by type, mostly fishing boats, some canoes. And then the state demographics has Minnesota obviously is the most, but then we have a lot of visitors that come to this area. The next just shows there's no AIS violations. And there's the county water quality calcium chart. So Soil and Water has been doing calcium data on lakes for the last 6 years. And that is important because calcium is the factor that contributes to if zebra mussels can survive in our lakes. So that's why we're getting a long-term data across lakes to see if they're increasing or having good information on that.
Mm-hmm.
Just images of some new giveaways that were successful this year. And then the last page is some fun photos of what happened. The happy inspector, the boat wash at Rockwood, and then trapping for rusty crayfish. And the star on that fingertip is a spiny water flea from Devil Trap Lake. That is the yearly metrics. No action required for that, just presenting.
Any questions for Amanda on the metrics? I thought it was interesting you count the number of crayfish.
Yeah.
I just assumed you'd go by poundage, but maybe it's a good sign that you do it individually.
Yeah,
You know?
I like data.
Yeah.
So, and I like to determine how many are female versus male, so we can
Uh-huh.
see if there's eggs attached and how much we're actually denting the population. Ann?
I have a
Commissioner Sullivan?
question about what do you do with the rusties that you catch?
Right. Stan Tull is also liking to get all the crayfish for a organic compost project that he's working on. But also, if they're not able to be transported to Stan, they get put into a gravel pit nearby. And then usually seagulls and ravens, they're gone instantly.
I just think that's an important educational piece for our public to know what happens with them
Mhm.
and that you can't transport them.
Correct. If the
There-
conservation officers have okayed the gravel pit.
And there was a boil, but
Mhm.
that was not the
Yeah.
most successful, or?
Yeah, that happened once a few years ago. It was a lot of work, and it was a great educational piece. People definitely enjoyed the talk, but they weren't interested in trying it.
And I lived in New Orleans for a month or two, and it was during the harvest, and they were amazing. So I would be excited. I'd
Yeah,
clean-
the ones that
clean-
we're
clean it
getting,
out.
the ones here that we're getting in the spring aren't very large yet,
Yeah.
so it's a lot of work to get like
Yeah.
a thumbnail of meat.
Yeah. Cool. Any other questions about the metrics? Then I see we have the plan after that.
Yep. This is the updated Cook County Aquatic Invasive Species Prevented Plan. Well, in 2014, this plan was first established and adopted by the county, and it was implemented in order to receive the state funds. So now after 7 years, it is being updated to reflect the actions that are currently the priority for the plan and put all the information in one place so that it's just an easier transition if there's any more people coming into the AIS program. So the first plan was 11 pages, and this plan is now 27 pages. So it's been expanded a little bit, and that is to add a lot of appendices so that there's more information in the back. So there's the same introduction, background information for pathways of spread for invasive species. And then it breaks down the action items into 6 different strategies. So we focus on risk assessment, watercraft inspection and compliance, outreach education, partnerships, early detection, and then managing existing populations. So within those strategies, I highlighted the actions that are a priority, the ones that will be accomplished every single year. And then there's the other priorities that are not shaded that are still a priority but will get accomplished with the limited resources available. And then the appendices that were added are the summaries of all the invasive species present in Cook County with a detailed description of each and pictures. So there's more information for the public to know how to identify them and what they're looking at. And there's the prevention plan participants who helped with updating this and all the contacts that I have within the state to help with AIS prevention. There's the county profile, which wasn't in there before, which just has all the stats of the county. The characterization of all the inland lakes with public accesses. So all the lakes in the county that have the accesses, and then which lakes are infested and the date, the year that they were found infested. And that's the majority of the updates for the plan.
Very good. Any questions for Amanda regarding the plan or comments? Commissioner Storley.
Thank you, Amanda. This is one of the most interesting committees that I'm on. It's actually very interesting, and the statistics that Amanda has put together here is just unbelievable in terms of all the, we call them ambassadors that go out and help at each of the, I'm close to Caribou Lake, so I'm running up there just to see what's going on there. Amanda also forwards educational things, webinars and so forth for us to keep up with all the information too. So it is, it's really, because we're the land of 10,000 plus lakes, we really up here need to be on the watch for any kind of invasion that happens somewhere else, because we know hopefully it won't come here. But with all the scrutiny that goes on and overseeing that Amanda does is, I think, will be the end of the road for a lot of them. So thanks again, Amanda.
Thank you, Commissioner Storley.
Anybody else have a comment or a question? I just have very limited experience with interaction with the program, but have had some trainings at AMC about it, and it's just interesting. I think I've said this before about the state of affairs in other parts of the state is scary, and we are very fortunate to be where we are and have such a strong program up here. How important it is, I feel like you can almost have an analogy with COVID, just as far as trying to really manage the spread, really slow the spread, and do these identifications. And it's just another piece of evidence where I'm just very proud of our community and the efforts that are being done in our community. Other parts of the state that can almost just like throw up their hands because they're so overwhelmed with what's going on. So I just want to thank you as well for your work there, and all this data helps a lot, clearly.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, well, I'll entertain a motion to approve the updated AIS plan.
Mr. Chair, I'll make the motion to approve the updated Cook County AIS Prevention Plan.
Thank you, Commissioner Storley. We have a motion. Is there support?
Sullivan supports.
Thank you, Commissioner Sullivan. We have a motion and support. Any further discussion? Hearing or seeing none. All in favor? Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you, Board. Thank you, Amanda.
Thank you, Commissioners.
And have a wonderful day. Let's see. So we got 9:22. We're still too early for the public hearing here, but we do have Rowan Watkins in the room here. And we can, if that's okay with everybody, we can move down to item 6B under Auditor, the cyber insurance coverage.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll just start with a little overview of the coverage. So currently, we have $250,000 of cyber coverage from MCIT. Actually, they contract with HSB provides the actual coverage. We did have $100,000 previous to this last year, but HSB broke out the coverage, the aggregate 100,000 as sublimits, much smaller than 100,000, depending on the kind of data cyber problem you have. So the standard coverage now is 250,000 at MCIT with these higher sublimits, but they're also offering 500,000 and $1 million of coverage, and that's what we're here to look at today because we get 250 standard. The coverage, it covers first party, that's us, data compromise, third party, some third party has some data compromise, through our contact with us, first party direct computer attack, third party network security liability, third party electronic media liability coverage. So the type of expense that is trending the highest with MCIT, what they see is the forensics. So when you've had a computer attack, whatever, you have to figure out what happened, where did it come from, what did it, what's your vulnerability. So forensics seems to be the biggest cost. And under $500,000 coverage, that coverage doubles along, the aggregate goes from 250 to 5 and the forensics doubles also. It's 62,500. In our current coverage, it would go to 125 under, let's say, 500,000 of aggregate coverage. I think I'll just stop there and then maybe Rowan can tell us some of the, our system and our risks and et cetera. We can come back to this later.
Sure. Good morning,
Morning.
Mr. Chair, Commissioners, colleagues. The recommendation we're making today is based on conversations that we've had with Brady, who brought the change in insurance to our attention, and then conversations I had with our former system administrator, Kishan Barwaliya. And before we get into that, I'd just like to say a little bit about the confidence that we have in our processes and policies to prevent the need for this. It's without going into a lot of details of them in this setting, I'd be happy to provide more information on them. But on our incident response, our data recovery, and our backups, we have a lot of confidence. And the objectives of them are to use standard processes based on industry best practices that minimize disruptions and the loss of data. And if that sounds familiar, it's because my predecessor left us in very good shape when it comes to that. With that said, the agenda item here today is about providing additional options to the county in a worst-case scenario. And ideally, it's something that would never be needed, but in the event that we would want to use this type of coverage, it would likely be for something like Brady mentioned, the more expensive one of the forensics, ransomware reimbursement, data recreation, system restoration, or even potentially defense costs for, or even claims, settlement claims related to the loss of personal data. And so, again, it would be a worst-case scenario, and we have a lot of confidence in our systems and our processes, our policies to prevent this, but based on what we see in terms of financial implications for organizations that find themselves in this type of situation, moving from $250,000 in coverage to $1 million in coverage for a cost of, Brady, correct me, I believe it's $4,000.
Yeah, just over
Here.
4,000.
Really seems like the responsible recommendation for us to make when it comes to this, and that's,
And I'll point out two things. MCIT says if you do have an incident, a cyber incident, you can't then, for that year, then apply for a higher limit. You have to wait a year for the following year, in case there was a second one. And I guess the other point is the increase in incidents. They don't have 2021 compiled, but the claims that they got for cyber compromise, 26 in 2017, and 34 in 2018, 38 in 2019, 44 in 2020, and they're seeing more than ever in 2020, but they don't have statistics compiled, and the dollar amounts have gone up higher than the claims. So the severity in 2017 was just 38,000, and then 128,000 in 18, 677,000 in 19, and it dropped back a little bit, 327 in 2020. But in 2021, they've seen one scammer using false ACH payment instructions, 3 member incidences just in recent months, 4.7 million in payments sent. One member recovered the payments, the others did not. Now, they're not, you can see the limits in here. They're not going to cover millions. There are sub-limits for certain aspects of the loss, but it just gives you a sense of what's going on out there.
All right, well, thank you. And yeah, it sounds like our best bet is good policies and good training, but in that worst case scenario, we want to be covered. So I really appreciate the recommendation here. And don't know if we have any, I mean, I hear about it on the news often, too often, I would say now. Commissioner Swalson, you might have some experience with some of this, but I don't know if any other commissioners, including Commissioner Swalson, if you wanted to give any input or thoughts or have questions or.
Well, the threats just continue to escalate, and it is one that I certainly don't get the briefings I used to when I was employed in that field, but yes, they continue to escalate, and they continue to find ways to extract more and more out of these, and these the newer processes now that where they can, lock up all your systems. What counties are finding when they choose not to pay to try to recover and bring everything back can be quite expensive. So yeah, it is, and not that I don't have confidence, I really do. And I had confidence in our systems too, but we had quite a lot of insurance because all it takes is one person that doesn't follow protocols or something like this, not intentional, but just, where a mistake is made. All best efforts are still relying on the individual to not do something that.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, the insurance is a valid thing anymore, and it appears, as you're hearing from the data, that it would be inappropriate not to do it because more and more of our interactions are going into this field, right? We're putting more and more data, and we're providing that for more and more people out in the public, you know, with the controls and things in there, but all of that, you know, just brings more people to the site, and so, yeah. Just things to consider as you go along. When you don't, if you don't use a computer a lot, you wouldn't have that kind of interaction or understanding, but as your systems grow, then.
So do the risks.
This is the last meeting before they need our decision, so.
Okay.
Right.
So,
Commissioner Hawkins, I saw a hand, yep.
Yeah, I just have a question. So if we go with $1 million and it's a $4,000 charge for that, does that come out of your budget or does that come out of the general finance?
I'd defer to Brady on that.
Yeah.
I'd be happy to add it to our budget, though.
Well, that, I'm just like trying to figure out,
Yeah.
how we pay for things and.
I'll have to come back to you on that, exactly how that works through.
Well,
It's divided up by much of it is divided up by department as identifiable. And if it's not identifiable, it's general revenue. And then we put it into Department 041, General Administrative, if it's not identified. And I'm not completely certain how they identify this. And I'd have to ask them to
I'm
be
just
sure.
curious if.
I think that's where it would end up, just in 041 is General Fund Department.
good question. I had
Yeah.
similar one.
Because I know your budget decreased, and I thought, is it going to go back up now? Just,
No, I wouldn't go necessarily to the IT department.
okay.
Okay, yeah, Commissioner Storley.
Thank you. Thank you, Rowan, for bringing this to our attention. Even with my own personal computer, there's always something on there that's like, I don't think I better open that up. It doesn't look good, or there'll be an updating to be aware of another step to prevent that type of stuff going on. So, you know, I think with the group of people that are using our own county computers, we need to really be protected as much as we can. And heaven help us if we would ever get in a situation where we would have to spend money to get out of a situation. So
Right.
thanks for your statistics, Brady. That's eye-opening.
Yeah.
Yeah, it really is.
All right, well, so we have options here, and the current coverage is 250,000, and the recommendation is to go to $1 million. We could do 500,000, but for the price of a single computer, we could go to that $1 million coverage. So it seems well worth it considering the risks and as Commissioner Swanson said, the escalation of the threats. So I'd entertain a motion. Commissioner Sullivan.
Mr. Chair, I move to approve an increase in our cyber insurance coverage to $1 million.
Thank you, Commissioner Sullivan. We have a motion. Is there support?
Swallowson supports.
Thank you, Commissioner Swanson. We have a motion and support. Any further discussion? We'll get updated on where the cost is coming out of for next meeting, and that'll be helpful. I don't think I have any other questions, but do very much appreciate your work on this, Rowan and Brady as well. Want to stay protected as well we can. So, okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Have a great day. Well, and now we are past the 9:30 threshold, so we can begin our public hearing. However, I do need to take a 5-minute break, and it's not personal, Tim. It's not promise. It's just a matter of tea.
We love to make him wait.
Take an hour.
No, it'll be fast.
And next time, connect with a different department.
Good morning. Good to meet you. Virginia, law firm here. Welcome aboard.
Thank you very much.
Hi,
Good morning.
good morning.
How are you doing?
I'm good. How about you and the family?
Well, it's easy to track you around town with your car. Because my wife has the same car, same color,
Okay.
and of course your license plate, so
That's how I can identify myself in a big
we
parking
always know
lot.
where you are. How are you doing?
There we go. Yeah, I'm doing good, thanks.
Good,
Yeah.
good. I like the sweater, very festive.
Yes, well, in these days of, not a lot of communication with people, gotta be
For sure.
festive, so.
Yeah, for sure, yeah.
Morning. Morning.
How are you?
I'm good. How about you?
Very good.
Yeah. You're gonna have service?
Yes, why not? We always have caribou at our heart, so,
Yes.
yeah, we gathered a lot of
That's
the
my
Western
son.
crops in traps this year, and they are, they're cruising across the lake.
non-flammable explosive,
Yeah.
and that's why that sheriff, I'm sure, Donnie was
Yeah.
fine, because it's not flammable, it's concussion.
Okay.
And you
Oh,
do
okay.
a special mix, and we take, put it in the
I really
pumpkins
miss the
and after it's all.
Oh,
done.
yeah,
And
in
it
person,
just-
yeah, they
yeah,
had
you
the
shoot it,
promoter,
and the
non-existent
concussion
or here's the agenda.
blows them up.
Yeah.
But it was,
Maybe,
the sheriff got in
maybe
trouble
it'd be
because
nice.
it was
Yeah.
the,
Yeah. Well, we
actually
can add it in a few
the
minutes.
Yeah,
process
good
of
to see
blowing
you.
it up made the metal so hot and molten that it actually started the fires.
Is it a golf cart?
A golf cart.
Why?
Why?
Yeah, why would one have tannerite in a golf cart? It's like a golf tactic.
It's a guy.
Is there warfare golf courses or something?
It's just a guy thing. You're overthinking this way too much. James? Okay. Thanks.
I guess they had to change the email for once.
So, see, Brady had some issues a while back,
On what?
emails and scams.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Well, I had a couple things that I was concerned about, and I didn't open them and forwarded it to Rowan. It did not look good.
When Kishan had the test a number of times,
Yeah.
like the faux threat, and it caught me one time, and I was like, oh, that's it, I'll never open another email.
They prevented, I think, a lot of things that were coming through a few years ago. No, I mean, especially when you consider the proliferation of what it must be. Because I don't recall seeing as many that feel like phishing.
Yeah.
I used to send those to them periodically, but now it's rare.
Yeah. Oh,
Just broke my mask. Is there one back there?
I've always been afraid that would happen to me. It hasn't yet, but,
Just keep a spare in my.
oh, yeah. They don't make masks like they used to, you know? Okey dokey. Well, thank you, everyone. We're back now. It's 9:41, and we can begin the public hearing for Caribou Lake SSD. Turn it over to Tim Nelson to give a little briefing here, if I may.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. First, I would actually like to take the opportunity to introduce to you Neva Maxwell, our new zoning administrator. She hails to us from Lake County next door, and we're almost at the 2-week mark now, doing very well, and have very good expectations for her. So.
Great. Welcome, Neva. Yeah, very, very, very happy to have you. Very great to meet you. I've met your husband once before at a parching party. So it's great to have you guys move to Cook County. So
Thank you very much. We're happy to be here.
yeah, congratulations and thank you. And it sounds like you are in a similar position in Lake County. So
Yes.
that's huge for us. And,
Yeah.
yeah, it's awesome all around. So
Perfect. Yeah.
Any-
Very good.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So, going back to provide a little bit of history on this actually starts about close to 20 years ago. There was a subdivision development on the far east side of Caribou Lake, and as a part of that development, the board elected to perform an environmental assessment, and there's the typical types, which are the EAWs or EISs. And through a little bit of research, we determined that we could be a little bit more flexible, expand the boundaries, and really take a look at the water quality of not only that particular lake, but expand it into the watershed a little bit. And it's through what's called an area-wide alternative urban area-wide review, AUAR. And it is within the Minnesota EQB rules, Environmental Quality Board rules. And so we went about and researched this and was able to expand that environmental review to not only include Caribou Lake, but also Agnes, Ward, and Bigsby Lakes as well. As a part of funding that process, we went through and created a subordinate service district, and we, in part, got some grants. We had the developer pay for some, and then we did a special assessment as a part of the subordinate service district. And as a part of the environmental review, one of the byproducts of that was the creation of a mitigation plan, which kind of set forth protocols in terms of looking at water qualities, types of things being done. We looked at all of the septic systems around the lake to make sure everything was inspected and upgraded if it needed to be, and such like that. Well, as we continued on, those types of reviews are good for a 5-year period, and then you either have to let them expire or you extend them out. And the Caribou Lake Property Owners Association had initiated this monitoring protocols and project, and they basically came back to the county every 5 years and wanted to continue on with that project and those protocols for another 5-year period. So since that point in time, we've been coming back every 5 years and have been doing another special assessment and annual water quality monitoring sampling. However, in around the 2019 timeframe, inadvertently that had been allowed to lapse, and so in order to get this going again, we needed to reinitiate this process. Well, we started doing this back in August, September timeframe, and upon further conversations with the county attorney, it was determined that because the size and shape and the number of properties involved in this subordinate service district were being reduced from the whole watershed area to just those riparian lots on Caribou and Bigsby, we actually had to, or have to, discontinue the original subordinate service district and then create a new subordinate service district for that just includes those lots that are and parcels that are identified. And for some reason, in order to create a new subordinate service district, it only has a 30-day notice period or so, but to disband one, it needed a 3-month period. So we put notice out in August, September timeframe for this particular month. So we have 2 actions that are actually on the table today. We have to officially just disband the old original subordinate service district, and then to create this new one, and as it states in the recommendation for the continuation of the water quality monitoring for the Caribou Lake watershed area, and this was added in to help combat aquatic invasive species. Now, this consists of a one-time 5-year special assessment of $60 for the properties. Once the notice had gone out, I've received mostly kind of inquiries in terms of, was that supposed to be $60 every year, or is it just a one-time shot? And it was a one-time shot. I've clarified that. I have received in 5 emails of support to continue this process and to reestablish this new subordinate service district, along with the $60 fee. There was one that one of the emails had questioned whether it was necessary because of the successes that had taken place, but that person was also not in any objection to creating this. And so basically that just kind of tees it up. Mr. Ryder can talk about any of the specifics, questions that you may have, but that's what I have for you today.
Thank you, Mr. Nelson. Yeah, Tom, do you have anything you'd like to add at this point, or?
I was here principally to answer questions, but, you know, this money, it's not a lot, excuse me, not a lot of money. You know, $12 a year, and there's a lot of folks in our organization that spend a lot of time doing this work. So it really supports a very significant volunteer effort to monitor the water quality. We've been doing it for decades, monitoring by 5 different parameters: oxygen, phosphorus, chlorophyll. We do SECI disc readings. So we're, you know, it's a pretty significant effort. I think it's very important. This is, from my perspective, a tremendous value to the property owners for $12 a year. They get all of this volunteer effort. The money really goes just to the testing, to the lab. That's about what it costs to run all the tests. And the volunteers just donate their time. So you know, I think it's, you know, really a terrific program and benefit for the property owners and for the community to really keep an eye on what's going on in the lake. From an AIS perspective, unfortunately, we now have one invasive aquatic species, the rusty crayfish, and came from Bigsby, kind of worked its way down like they typically do through Murmur Creek into Caribou, and they're growing quite rapidly. We've begun efforts to try and deal with that. It's really a tough one because they, like most invasive species, they have very little predation. They reproduce rapidly, so they've grown quite a bit. So we're doing what we can there. We've got a few ideas partnering with the DNR, but really that becomes sort of a management function. Right? We're probably not going to get rid of them and try and contain them. We also spend a lot of time volunteering at the public boat landings to inform boaters about invasive species. The county has staff there, but we try and fill some of the gaps when the county is not present, so that's part of our effort. Again, that's a volunteer effort. Nobody's paid for that. So I think that about covers our end of it. We do a website. All the data is published for this year and many years if anybody wants to look at it.
Great, thank you. Any questions for Tim or Mr. Ryder at this point? We do have one other member of the public here, if you'd like to.
I'm supportive of the recommendation. I'm a member of the Lake Association. We've been owners since '07, and we've seen the quality improve. So I do believe because of the initiatives of the Lake Association plus the testing. So here to be supportive.
Thank you. Yeah. Any questions from commissioners? Commissioner Storley.
Thank you. I have no question, but thank you for bringing this to our attention. Being that I'm in the West End, I, over the years, have attended all of their Lake Association meetings, and currently Larry Mullen is on the AIS committee, so we see him and his wife giving us more statistics about what's going on there, and the summer is a time that you're relaxing and enjoying the fact you live on a lake, but they're out there taking samples and doing all kinds of things to, like you say, improve the quality, and it is working. So I appreciate the fact that you've also brought this to our attention is really important for the group to continue what they're doing.
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner Starley. And my limited understanding of just how the whole system works is that, sure, it does benefit Caribou Lake, but it also benefits all of us in Cook County by really trying to keep invasive species at bay and to really stop or slow that spread. So I appreciate the work that's being done there, and the successes. And of course, there's things that get through, but yeah, management is the next step there. So, all right. Well, I think are there any letters that you received, Mr. Yorkie, or did they all go to Mr.
I did
Nelson?
not receive any.
Okay. Well, I think we can then close the public hearing, and I can entertain a motion here for what we'd like to do.
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Starley.
just a clarification. So you said you wanted two motions, one to disband and then to recreate a new one. Is that
It
right?
is correct, Commissioner Starley. yes,
Okay.
Mr. Chair.
All right. So I will make a motion to disband the old subordinate district and to create a new one in this year of 2021.
All right. We have a motion. Is there support?
Sullivan supports.
Thank you, Commissioner Sullivan. Motion and support. Further discussion. I just want to clarify, do we need two separate motions, or is it fine to be wrapped up in that one?
I think it's fine to be wrapped up into the one.
Great. Any other discussion, questions from anyone? Hearing or seeing none. All in favor? Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you very much, Mr. Nelson.
Thank you.
Mr. Ryder,
Thank you very much.
Madam Public. Neva, good to meet you.
Thank you.
And let's see here. That brings us down to item 6C now, and this is the 2022 county budget and levy. Auditor Powers.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So in the agenda items, you see the proposed budget and levy, which we approved in September, and which includes the contingency for contract negotiations. And since then, you all attend the Human Services meeting and heard the additional grant from Public Health Human Services, so they've now included that in their final budget request. And I could send this out to you. I have some revisions, one based on that, which reduces Human Services levy to a 7.59% decrease. And then a few other revisions I've made, mostly to my own department, increasing A87 fees by 10,000, lodging tax fees by 4,000, just reviewing what's happening this year. Some extraordinary circumstances, reducing my audit cost again with the new private auditor, an increase for IFS fees in Rowan's department. This is just information he learned recently, $4,206. And I'm increasing the equipment replacement in the election department by $2,500 because of the ongoing match requirements for the election grants now and coming up. And then a small change, the ARC final number increased at $909. The net result of all of this is, right now, would be a levy of $11,002,757, which would be an increase levy percentage of 3.05 with those changes. But that does not include any potential changes in commissioner's salary and meal per diems
And the increase in the cost for the cyber insurance.
and the increased cost for the cyber insurance. Yeah.
Well, that's good news.
That's good
Yeah.
news.
That's great news.
Yeah, mostly the grant in PHHS by far.
Yeah, yeah. Any questions for Auditor Powers? I'm assuming that we're not going to want to approve this today.
No.
I see your hand, Commissioner Hawkins.
I
Good.
was trying to decide what to.
Yeah, yeah.
No, in our previous discussion, we had made that,
Yep.
discussion, and I mean, I can motion if you like to table, but that's, I think, where we're at for.
Yeah, just wanna give us a moment to digest this
sure.
and talk about anything, but otherwise, yeah, I'm very happy to move it on, but just an opportunity right now to ask
Yep.
if we want to discuss things further. One angle, I guess I'll say for this is that this is below our long-term average levy increases. And we have some unique circumstances with health insurance this year. And clearly we have unique circumstances with this public health grant. We're still negotiating. We're still in negotiations. And so that's it's a big factor in my mind. And again, we're not making a decision today, but I'm just trying to express all of my thoughts here, where my head's at. So I just look at all that, and then also just looking at, I think we're all on a similar page as far as would like more information for the commissioner's salary discussion, and so what I'm trying to say is I see room here, but the timing is not appropriate. Is how I'm reading the board for that. So so that's just all of my thoughts put out there. It'll be helpful for me to see how, well, it's not going to change it much, but how just those few things we're asking to include are going to affect it. And then I think I'm going to feel pretty good about the work that's been done, considering the everything.
Well, given the fact that we're going to get some more data next week, that will be very helpful for us, I would like to move to table this to our December 21st meeting.
Thank you, Commissioner Sullivan. We have a motion. Is there support?
Swallowson supports.
Thank you, Commissioner Swalson. We have a motion and support. Any further discussion? Did you have a question? I'm sorry if I...
Well, I'm still considering the negotiations, and
No.
do we are we going to be approving a levy without knowing our personnel costs? I don't know how this works.
At this point, it appears that those negotiations will not be complete before
Okay.
the 21st.
I was hopeful. I guess I still am, but yeah, that's
Okay.
probably
That's,
a more accurate
Mhm.
expectation, but. So that's not ideal, but that's I think, just kind of how how it happens sometimes, and,
It's not unusual.
No.
Historically.
yeah.
Mhm.
And I can be comfortable with it. It's, like I said, not ideal, and I think there's probably some level of discomfort on the board about that dance, so. But yeah, I appreciate that, Brady, just identifying that it's not
Happened before.
uncommon, yeah. Okay. Any other thoughts or questions for discussion here on this motion? Going once, going twice. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion passes unanimously to table till next meeting. Thank you, Brady. We can move on to 6D, the revolving loan fund application.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is a request, the committee met last week with 4 owners who are purchasing the 8 North Broadway building. They call themselves Sweetwater Company LLC, and they're asking for a $75,000 revolving loan to renovate the first floor of that building and create a shop, a boutique, if you will. And the grant request was recommended for approval by the board unanimously by the committee, subject to the final, their final loan with SBA, with Bremer Bank, and with an IRRB grant, and then we would get a third position mortgage behind the bank and SBA, and personal guarantees of the 4 applicants. And so this, our cost is for the remodel of the first floor of that building. And I guess I would ask for any questions.
Any questions for Auditor Powers? All right, well, no questions, I'd entertain a motion here.
I will make that motion to approve the revolving loan fund of $75,000 to the Sweetwater Company LLC.
Thank you, Commissioner Hawkins. We have a motion. Is there support?
Sullivan supports.
Thank you, Commissioner Sullivan. Motion and support. Any further discussion? I guess I didn't have, I was trying to rack my brain for some kind of question.
They were asked at the revolving loan fund committee, so.
Yeah, that's what I was,
It was a lengthy discussion.
Good.
And
that helps me. Well then, I'll call a vote. All in favor? Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you, Board. Thank you, Auditor Powers. Moving on to 6E, Election Equipment Grant.
So the state has made an election grant available to all of the counties, and this is decision day, so they need our decision at the meeting today. So this, I don't have specifics at this point, other than I need your approval to apply for it. I'm still waiting for some information from ES&S for 1 or 2 little pieces of equipment. But essentially, what we need out of this grant is to replace our assistive voting machines. They're called the automarks. They're people who have difficulty filling out a ballot, maybe vision impaired, and et cetera. So we've had those voting machines. These are not voting machines. These marking machines since 2006. They're 15 years old. They're expected to fail, or their software to fail at any time. So this is a good opportunity to replace those. We have a good piece of equipment. The Omni ballot from Sea Change. We've looked at some others at conferences, et cetera. So the grant will pay for 50% of this type of equipment, so we expect to get that. And we're allowed up to $5,000 per precinct, which is, in our case, that's $65,000, which we're not asking for. These will be about $19,000 for the 4 units. So we have half of it in our reserves, in our election reserves, and then the other half will be paid for by the grant. The one thing I'm waiting on, considering also a separate little computer and a system that would allow us to accumulate the votes from the machine and upload the results to the Secretary of State site. For our history, we have entered vote by vote by vote, by precinct, by each name, et cetera. We've done that forever. And so this would be an opportunity to have that initial cost 50% covered. But I'm waiting for some numbers on that, so I didn't quite finish the grant.
Auditor Powers, am I correct, this is a federal requirement?
These assistive voting devices are a federal requirement.
Okay.
We haven't found any real need for them
Mhm.
ourselves. We actually don't, people test them out occasionally, but we haven't seen anybody that really needs them. I think because absentee balloting, mail balloting, especially here, is so widespread that I think people that have that need take care of it that way.
Mhm.
But in some precincts, people, they should have the opportunity to go to the polls if they wish.
Correct.
And then you have to have these if they do, and I think
All right. I
you
just
have to
wanted-
have, you have to have one in each precinct, just to tell you why we're ordering 4. So there's one in each of the voting precincts, live precincts in Grand Marais for those 2. We have one stationed at the auditor's office, basically for all the mail ballot, and a 4th one as the backup unit.
Okay,
So that's the reason for 4.
thank you for
So we'd
clarifying.
be asking to replace all 4.
All right.
Any further questions for Auditor Powers? Then I'll entertain a motion here.
Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion to approve the resolution to apply for the equipment grant to replace our assistive voting equipment.
Thank you, Commissioner Starley. We have a motion. Is there support?
Hawkins support.
Thank you, Commissioner Hawkins. We have a motion and support. Is there any further discussion? Only other thing I think I asked was just about if this would allow for, or if our system would allow for ranked choice voting, if that ever came to the state, and it wasn't very, my understanding is it's not totally clear and it might need some reprogramming, but yeah.
I couldn't answer that,
And all-
especially on the assistive voting equipment.
It has come to our state, just not to our
Yeah.
county.
Right.
Well, I mean, yes.
Yeah, there are many folks in the state, local areas in the state that use it.
Yeah, there's, we as a county are not allowed to.
Correct.
Unless.
Correct. That's why I said, but there
Okay.
are areas, you
Yeah.
said to the state, if it comes to the state, and I was just clarifying. Otherwise, we would both be getting, contacted about, yes, it is in the state.
I see.
I was
Yes.
just clarifying
It
from that
exists, but
perspective.
yeah, I meant, yeah, thank you.
That's all.
And the only reason I asked it is just because that's what I see on the far horizon. Not that it's imminent, but, and it's something that I'm interested in, so.
Yeah.
The more we talk about it, maybe the more we can talk about it.
You can always talk
Kind of
about
like
it.
salaries.
Statewide, the only requirement they put in is that anything you buy has to accommodate 4-column voting. So, we have that now with if you have 4 major parties. So
I see.
in a primary, you need 4 columns. So,
Okay.
so these all of our equipment meets that standard.
Very good. Okay, well, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you, Auditor Powers. And we're moving on to Section 7, Administrator. 7A is the December board meeting schedule. Administrator Yorkie.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and good morning, Commissioners. This one's pretty self-explanatory. The second business meeting of the month would ordinarily fall on the 28th, which is between Christmas and New Year's. I believe it's been this board's practice in the past to move that meeting up to before Christmas. If there's a need for a second business meeting, which clearly, as we've discussed today, there will be. And so the recommendation is that you all vote to move the second business meeting from December 28th to the 21st.
Good. Any questions for Administrator Yorkie? I think we've kind of gone over it pretty well. I'll go ahead and make the motion to move our regular meeting from the 28th to the 21st at 10:30 a.m. Is there support?
Storley support.
Thank you, Commissioner Starley. Motion support. Any further discussion? Hearing or seeing none. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Same sign. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you, Mr. Yorkie. Down to 7B.
Mr. Chair?
Oh, yes, Commissioner
I would
Swalson.
motion that we approve cancellation of the Committee of the Whole meeting in December.
Thank you, Commissioner Swalson. We have a motion and I'll support it. Any further discussion? Hearing or seeing none. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Same sign. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you for that, Commissioner Swalson. Moving on to 7B, Administrator Yorkie, the ACA Legislative Priorities Ballot for 2022.
Yes, and this is something actually that Commissioner Storley asked to put on the agenda. So Commissioner, if you'd like to go over that, that'd be great.
Okay, thank you. Well, I'm a part of the Arrowhead County Association Legislative Priorities. John Ongaro is our representative. And what we need to do is everybody have a consensus, and then we fill in what the whole board, and then we'll get this off to Barb. Either April could send it to her, or I could take it tomorrow, because we meet tomorrow.
Oh.
So, of course, PILT reform, that's a extraordinarily good one that needs support. Bonding for Justice Involved Female Program. That came about from Carleton County. They're going to be building a justice center, and part of their support would be for the female program. Mental health funding, that is more or less around Moose Lake, which was closed down many years ago, and some reform and alternative funds coming from the state needs to be relooked at. Increased funding for counties for corrections and probation, that's a big concern. Improvements to the ICWA incentive program for counties. So I would say we're to indicate our first priority and then on down to our fifth priority, which would be last, our lowest priority. So I would say look at what would be our first priority that we could say this is number one for Cook County.
So I sit on AHA, the Arrowhead Health Alliance, and the Moose Lake Alternative Funds is a very big issue for our region. And so that was my knee-jerk first priority. A lot of that, and please follow along. It's a winding road.
Okay.
A lot of that.
Get comfortable.
Yeah. A lot of that is about response, and we absolutely need to respond. I like to think more about as far as prevention and being proactive, though, and so I see that, and they're tied together, certainly, but just learning a little bit about the ICWA program makes me think that is probably a stronger way to prevent and have a positive, upstream, downstream, whichever, in the stream way of things, and so that's where my thoughts went to. And of course, PILT reform we know is huge.
Correct.
And my thinking there, at least, is the federal side of things is a much larger impact than the state side of things. State side of things still very significant, but that's just how my mind is all working through. So Please, everyone, share your own thoughts and process. But my number one would, I think, be ICWA, and then number two would probably be the mental health, and number three would probably, and because of just the impacts that will have on our region, the mental health, and then number three would be PILT. And then I don't know about four and five, if it would be the corrections and probation for four, and that's probably what I'd do. That's just me, though, so please, everyone, share your thoughts. And
So as I prioritize these, ICWA came out number one, very, very strongly. For me, PILT was number two, mental health was three. So we're very close in our thinking.
how about 4, 5, though? Are you there? Not yet?
Not yet.
Okay. Anybody else?
Go ahead.
Okay. Well, I don't really know about ICWA and versus mental health. Mental health I put as, actually, I went back and forth with PILT and mental health funding also, realizing both important issues, but, and I don't know the background on either the ICWA or the mental health funding to know which one would be more beneficial to the residents of Cook County. So I will defer to you on that one. But the corrections and probation, I also think that funding formula needs to be looked at, because there's another prevention, probation. We want to help people who are struggling and not have them sitting in a jail somewhere.
Right.
So we do, that is also a very important preventative measure. So that, those, the pill to the mental health funding and corrections were my top three. But I'm open to changing that.
Thank you.
I was aligned with the ICWA, the PILT, and then mental health. I would be 4 was going to be the county's corrections and probation, and 5 would be the bonding for justice involved female program.
Thank you. What do you think, Commissioner Starlight?
Well, interesting, I wanted to hear all of you out for that, because we had a long discussion
I'm sure.
at our association meeting, but, yeah, I guess I'm in agreement with ICWA being the top one, going to PILT and mental health and increased funding for corrections, probation, and then bonding for the female program. Kind of my take on that.
Yeah, the bonding is just so specific to the
Yeah,
one
to
county.
the one
Those
It
are
is,
hard.
yeah.
I mean, not that I don't want to support our brethren in
No.
Carleton County, but it's just, it's too specific.
And we may very well be using.
Yes.
We may.
It's-
Yeah.
it's
We may.
Good,
That's
good,
right.
good chances, but yes,
Right.
yeah, just, you got to decide. It's kind of like when we do the voting at our policy
Yeah.
policy
Yeah,
conference.
yeah.
Like,
It is.
well, how about all of it, you know? No,
Yeah.
no, we gotta-
No, you never get it all.
So, so I didn't write anything down, but it sounded like, and so, I guess maybe we should talk a little bit more about the ICWA. I don't know a whole lot about it, just learned recently that some counties are kind of gaming the system a little bit as far as like, well, what's more worthwhile, to be in compliance or not? You know, does this cost, and messing with human lives, children's lives, you know, it just is, that's where I was like, oh, okay, something needs to be done there, like yesterday,
Absolutely.
you know. So that's where that rose to my concern.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, please, Commissioner Sullivan.
If you do a little historical review of the Indian Child Welfare Act, you will learn that it actually became about because of the issues from the state of Minnesota. And since that time, we have not done well. And that's why these other groups have come up, legal groups have stepped up to take on these issues to force the implementation as it was designed to try to assist. I think the reason I call it out as number one is because it's a very good example of doing the right thing and putting it in place for the right reasons, but then people, as you say, whether it's called gaming or just not being true to what they had signed up to do.
Yeah.
And so that's really my reasoning for focusing on that one as number one, is because we're not being as good as our word, and we're not following this program which is set out through the federal government to the states. And since you would think because of how it came about, and maybe it's just not well known now after all these years, we would be doing better at it. But since we're not, that's why I continue to focus and pull it up, to the high end, just to keep that focus on it.
Absolutely.
I mean, that's really it. And it's more, I rarely make decisions out of emotion, but that one starts to get there because it's troubling to me that, with our history, we're not more focused in ensuring that these things are done for the right reasons for the children.
It's about doing the right thing.
Correct.
Thank you for that, the rationale, and I guess I can speak, maybe we don't need to, but I can speak a little bit more about
Sure.
the Moose Lake alternative funds and AMHI reform. And just that the way things, so when Moose Lake shut down, there was, the state legislature set aside funding specifically for our region to help bring services to the region as a kind of a replacement for the Moose Lake facility. And now it's sounding like the state legislature is moving in the direction where that doesn't count anymore, and all of those funds will get distributed throughout the whole state versus just our region. And so that's a pretty significant impact there. But there's thus far has not been a champion. I shouldn't say that. There have been champions, but not necessarily a legislator champion. And so it's just really navigating that is getting kind of frustrating with AHA, and I think the tribes as well are going to not be happy with that. And they might be in a better position to get the ear of the governor on this. But that's kind of why that was up at the top. But I mean, we all know
I think
the importance of mental health.
Yeah, as long as they
Yeah.
get into those top three, I
Yep.
think, we
Yep.
all understand that's then, from our county's perspective, these are the ones that we think are the top ones.
Yep.
And we
As
have
I
to-
understood it, they asked for our
Right,
top three.
yeah. And
then-
this has been going on for several years. We just keep pounding at it.
Yeah.
Let them know we're still there. We still want that distribution, all the whole thing, so.
Sure.
Yep.
Yep.
That's all we can do, is just keep it in front of them. Yeah.
Oh, so it's just I'm sorry, I misunderstood something. It's just
No,
the
no.
top three when,
Well, did you say, they want them all five ranked?
They want all
correct?
five.
Okay.
All ranked,
okay,
Okay,
Yeah.
so I
yeah.
okay.
misspoke there, thank you.
Oh, okay, no, just making sure. So, I'm getting the impression ICWA was good as a number one. And I don't know if Commissioner Hawkins, if you've seen, yeah.
I'm fine
you're-
with that.
Okay. So that's pretty easy for us to prioritize. And then it was between the PILT or the mental health, and I'm, again, just trying to think about impacts. It's not clear, putting those side by side, which would have greater impacts for Cook County. Don't know. I didn't keep close enough track of what we all thought
I
on that.
did,
Yeah,
and
thank you,
health came out
Commissioner
number
Sullivan.
2,
Okay.
and mental health is 3.
Okay. And are we good with that? PILT number 2?
2,
Mental health 3? Okay. And then I think we had the corrections and probation for number 4, and then the bonding for number 5.
Yep.
All right. Thank you, Commissioner Storley, for bringing this forward.
Thank you for keeping track, making your
Yeah,
list.
thank you, Commissioner
By
Sullivan,
scribbling.
for record keeping.
okay. So would April want to pass this on, or should I take it physically tomorrow? Barb Caskey needs to have this by tomorrow, by the end of today, actually.
Oh,
Oh, we can
Yeah,
convey
okay.
that.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Email it?
yes, please, to Barb Caskey, yep. And, we have everything we need there, do you figure, James?
I think so, yes.
Okay. Thank you, April. And then that brings us on to item 7C, authorize counties' participation in the state opioid settlements.
All right. I know that the commissioners all heard a lot about this at the ANC annual meeting yesterday, but for the public's benefit, this is part of a national settlement that the state of Minnesota has been a party to. And through the involvement of the Association of Minnesota Counties, the state was able to negotiate a very favorable settlement that the county now has the opportunity to participate in. And so, as the agenda item makes clear, we don't know entirely what the financial implications will be for a county like ours with a small population. It's probably not going to be super big, but the overall state settlement is $300 million over 18 years, and this would give us access to some of that funding for opioid remediation programs. So the recommendation is to authorize me to take the steps that we need to take to participate in that settlement.
Thank you, Administrator Yorkie. Any questions for James? Then I would entertain a motion.
I will motion to approve the resolution authorizing the county administrator to take steps necessary for the county to participate in the state attorney general settlement with opioid manufacturers Johnson & Johnson and 3 opioid distributors.
Thank you, Commissioner Saulson. We have a motion. Is there support?
Sullivan supports.
Thank you, Commissioner Sullivan. We have a motion and support. Any further discussion? Just found it really interesting, all the ins and outs as presented at the AMC conference.
Yep.
Oofda. It's, yeah, the work that was put into this is very impressive, and I'm pretty grateful for that. Again, don't know what kind of impact it'll have for us, but for the state in general, or for all the counties in the state, it'll do a whole lot of good. All right, I'll call the vote. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you, Mr. Yorkie. We're on to item 7D, Administrator Updates.
All right. I have several things for you this morning. The first being, as you're aware, Minnesota OSHA is requiring employers of 100 or more people to participate or to establish a vaccination and testing program that applies to both private sector and public sector employers, of which we are one. And so the requirement was established by the federal government. A number of states have sued, questioning the legality of that requirement. Those cases have now been consolidated in the federal court system. We've not heard anything further about how things are going to proceed, when we might get some kind of verdict from or ruling from the Circuit Court of Appeals, but it does seem likely that this will ultimately end up in the Supreme Court. And so that's one thing. So until it's actually upheld, we have no plans to implement this, but we do need to be prepared to implement the program if the federal courts uphold it. So we've been working to get a draft policy, and something came to my attention last week that has a bearing on our plan for implementing the requirement, and that is the ability to ask employees to cover part of the cost of testing if they opt not to vaccinate. So Minnesota statutes 181, 61 indicates that it is unlawful for any employer to require any employee or applicant for employment to pay the cost of a medical examination or the cost of furnishing any records required by the employer as a condition of employment, except certificates of attending physicians in connection with the administration of an employee's pension and disability benefit or citizenship papers or birth records. So this language seems to indicate that we would not be able to ask employees to pay for the cost of testing if they elect not to vaccinate. Now that's significant because we haven't yet started collecting verification of vaccination. So we don't have the number of staff who are not yet vaccinated. But if we extrapolate based on the county's overall totals, which are about 70-30, right? We have 70% of our residents who are vaccinated. And so based on the size of the organization, we could anticipate that somewhere between 30 and 35 employees may be unvaccinated. And if they elect not to vaccinate once this requirement is put in place, then they would have to test. Or they could opt to test. They could also opt to, if they didn't want to do either of those, then termination would be the likely outcome there. But as I've mentioned in this meeting several times before, we're not looking for ways to get rid of employees. In fact, quite the opposite. We need all hands on deck. We've had a lot of turnover, and so we're really trying to approach this in a way that maximizes convenience and makes it as easy for folks to meet the requirements as possible. But this statute raises the question of the cost of providing that testing. So folks would have to test once every week. So that would be, 30 to 35 tests a week. The tests are upwards of $125 to $200. And that's potentially a significant cost. Now, this requirement does not come with any additional funding to cover that cost. So we would need to cover that cost using county funding or potentially American Rescue Plan funding. But I've asked different parties about whether that's an allowable expense under ARP, and I've gotten mixed answers. So that's an outstanding question. The other question, though, is the applicability of the statute if, in fact, the requirement is to vaccinate. If people opt to test instead of vaccinate, then you could make the argument that that this statute doesn't apply because they're opting to take the testing option rather than to vaccinate, which in fact is the requirement. As you know, there was a trial last week. The county attorney was tied up, and I wasn't able to consult with her on this question. And so what I am hoping is that I'll be able to come to you with a draft policy next week. I did talk with the county attorney yesterday, and she is trying to get some additional information.
Commissioner Swanson.
Yeah, not a question as much as I think it's important to get the perspective of the county attorney. Like yourself, when I read through that statute, to me, it was different if the individual was given options and then chose to go in that direction. The county would pay for, is included as far as the vaccination pieces of this. I'm not sure, certainly would lean, on our county attorney to help us with that piece of it, and also with her research whether there's others in the state where they're leaning and that type of thing. But you're right, the cost is not insubstantial. When you look at that on an ongoing weekly basis with no sign of when, if ever, that would end. So.
Put that into the levy, huh? Oofta.
Well, and it is, when you talk that from an every week, perspective, and.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that cost, assuming you know, if it's $150 a test and we've got 30 employees, that's in the neighborhood of $4,500 a
Correct.
week.
Every
of cost.
single week.
Now, this is an emergency temporary
18,000
standard.
a month.
Lasting, so the current ETS is for 6 months. It could be renewed. This wouldn't be presumably indefinite, but it doesn't matter. I mean, in the short term, it would be a significant unbudgeted cost for the county.
Yeah, because you just add that up, what, you're talking 18,000 a month, so, you know, easily 200,000 a year.
Yeah.
I'm concerned about the logistics. I mean, every week, how fast do you get a turnaround for positive or negative? You know, it takes
Well, that's-
3-4 days at the clinic.
That's
to
the
get-
other piece of this,
Right.
plus not everybody are day shift workers. We have some,
Yeah.
like law enforcement and others, that work on rotating shifts and alternating shifts and these types of things. And so
Yeah.
the availability of that
Yeah,
before they're able to come in to go, because generally, as long as they've tested, they can go to work. You haven't gotten your results yet, but you know what I mean, just because of if you're doing it on a weekly basis. But it's the ability to get the individuals to test isn't even, you know, logistically simple.
And they need to be on the clock for that.
Correct. Yeah, that's the other piece of it. If you're requiring it, it then becomes a job requirement, which then means that, you know, they're going to be compensated for going to get that test, which can also add to your overall payroll. So all of these things kind of come together to look like a not very attractive financial burden on the county.
it's too bad the American Rescue Funds cannot be used for this. I mean, you're getting mixed answers, though.
Well, correct. So it's possible they could be, but,
Yeah.
you know, again, we had hoped that we would be able to use a significant portion of that funding to address our housing needs,
Right.
right?
Right.
Infrastructure.
Yeah,
So anything that would siphon off any amount of that funding would take away from that purpose.
If it was an easy answer, we wouldn't be giving it to our county attorney.
right.
But our confidence in you is high.
Well, I think it speaks to government and making sure that we do not make rules or pass laws without thinking through how does this really work? And what's the impact to the people on the street? And not just sitting around a table. That's my frustration with this whole thing.
Well, it's an example of an unfunded mandate.
Unfunded mandate, that's correct. With all the pieces that come with it.
Yeah. Was that the final update?
That is all I have for now.
That's a rough way to leave it.
Yeah, and you're exactly
You're
right
going
about
out on a
that.
low note here.
You're exactly right, Mr. Chairman, and I wish that things were more conclusive at this point,
Yeah.
but there's still some big questions that we need to answer. So that's where we are on that. If there are no further questions about that, I'll move on to my next item,
Oh,
which
okay.
is something that we referred to earlier in the meeting, which is contract negotiations. Those are ongoing. We actually do have a tentative agreement with one of our unions, so still working with the other two to try to land on an agreement. And I would say the tenor of those conversations so far has been pretty positive. I think we've had some really productive conversations with all three unions, and I feel very optimistic about the direction that we're going, and I'm pretty confident that we will end up with an agreement, of course. But I feel like we're moving the right direction. So I'll have more information to share about that at the next, well, actually not at the next meeting, which is next week, but probably after the new year. Other thing I wanted to note, I just got an email in the last day. Let me pull this up. So the county tribal relations training that the Association of Minnesota Counties is going to be offering, that's going to be on February 3rd and 4th. The registration for that is now open. It just opened yesterday afternoon. And I know that County Attorney Hickens has been very involved in discussions about that training. And I know that this board has a high interest in that. So just wanted to make you aware, and you should have received from AMC the instructions for registering for that training. But again, it's going to be February 3rd and 4th in Hinckley, I believe. So, next thing, wanted to update you on the, as you know, we're planning to do a compensation study in the first part of next year. Last I updated you on this, we had expected that our former HR director, Pamela Dixon, would be able to assist in updating the remaining job descriptions. There are roughly 80 plus job descriptions, and she had updated about half of those before leaving employment with the county at the end of September. And so we'd hope that she would be able to complete that work on a contract basis, but she has taken a full-time position now and will not be able to assist with that. So I just wanted to let you know I'm circling back. We've had a conversation with our new HR director, Leah Ekstrom, to see if she would be able to assist with that. The big question is how much of her time may be taken up with the vaccination and testing program. Because if we have to move forward with that, that's going to be a huge time consumer for her, and would likely make it difficult, if not impossible, for her to work on those job description updates, which means we would have to get some assistance from a third party, from a consultant, to do that work. And so I just wanted to let you know that's where that effort stands right now, and hope to have more information for you in the near future.
And to be clear, that was a service that was an option in one of those in the package, so.
It was.
With that being the case, if we don't find another option, that is an option. We can go
Right.
back and amend that possibly. You know, we'll just have to have that discussion.
Right.
Yep. So item 5 is at the last meeting of the Budget Advisory Committee, we talked about the possibility of updating the capital improvement plan by working with Wold Architects, which is the firm that did our building assessments 3-4 years ago. They developed a facilities master plan and CIP. And so the discussion with the Budget Advisory Committee concerned their comfort level in simply going ahead and working with Wold versus seeking assistance from other firms. And the consensus in that discussion was that the Budget Advisory Committee, which is also serving as the Facilities Advisory Committee, really wanted us to do a request for proposals. And so I have I've actually drafted a document, an RFP, and we'll be able to share that at the next meeting, and would be seeking the board's approval to go out and request proposals from architecture design firms to assist us in the update of the CIP and ongoing services to potentially manage new projects. So that's what I have there. Any questions on that?
I think that's a good idea. I think the community's confidence in Wold was shaken, to say the least. And so we want to have our community confident in the plan that we develop. So my only concern is any additional cost. Like, I don't know specifically how much we spent on that one,
Yep.
but that's something that's in my head. But still, if you want that confidence, it seems important. So, but that's where my wandering mind goes back and forth. Commissioner Swalson.
Well, the other piece of it is, I'm not looking for a long-range building project or, plan. I'm looking for a capital improvement plan that wraps into this whole process our current, how do we put on a stable footing our capital costs for maintaining our current buildings first? I'm much more interested in that before I look at, I'm not saying that the county won't have needs and doesn't have
Right.
needs for going forward. I'm talking buildings only. We've already talked through the highway department, bridges, roads, and equipment. But from the building perspective, I just wanted to make that statement. For me personally, I'm more focused on, let's make sure we're maintaining appropriately because our tour showed us that there were many things that we needed to address. And we still haven't been able to kind of pull that together to say, what does that look like? And what I'm hearing from you is that the committee that was looking at it says, yeah, we're going to need some help. Well, okay, but I'm interested in that piece. Would, my challenge on that is they put together for us what they called a capital improvement plan. Well, it is, but it was, here's the buildings we're going to build going forward. I'm more interested in the first piece before I step off into the second. I want to make sure we can maintain what we have within our budgetary and levy abilities before we step forward. That's just my comment.
That's a really good point. I appreciate that greatly.
And I'm totally on board with that. I think that makes a lot
Good,
of sense.
thank you.
Yeah.
I also,
But with that in mind, I'm absolutely supportive if we need that assistance to be able to bring in somebody to go out for a request for proposal on that. I'm with you, Mr. Chairman, that, spending the additional money, no, I don't like to do that, but if that's what it's going to take to get that one put together so that we can have it and have it prioritized and have it laid out so we can look at it from a levy perspective and get it done in a shorter term, then yes, I support that, going for the request for proposals, and hopefully we won't be shocked with what they tell us they need to to put it together.
and, well, I think that's such a very important point
It's-
about the steps and the phases, because it's not clear to me, even if the previous one had that, it
We did
seemed
not.
like, right.
No, that was what,
And so
that
what I
was
was-
what was being challenged by the public was,
First things first, yeah.
we don't see the plan for maintaining what we currently have. Why, let's look at that as a community and what that costs. And then we'll talk about, whether we need to go for bonding or other things to build other buildings, but let's just, I'm trying to get my head around the total cost as we go forward.
Well, and the reason I was kind of questioning that is because, yes, there will be additional costs to come up with this, and I hope that I don't know if there is, efficiency of scale of having that first piece, which I think we could probably all agree is probably the first step. And then, and maybe not, maybe this is more controversial, having that second piece about the further buildings. But where I was trying to kind of justify that cost is having the comparison from Wold's, of course, they don't have the first piece.
I'm
but,
not trying to say
yeah.
that Wold can't be involved in that request for proposal.
Oh, sure.
That's, because they do have a history and they do have some background there. But, it'd be interesting to see what they would look at to put together that first part and then merge that together into the second.
Yeah, no, that's interesting too, but
For
I
comparison.
was going under the assumption that we wouldn't necessarily be using Wold, and so where I was trying to see that comparison is if a different firm had that second piece, if that was part of the RFP, to just see where
Where they saw
things
the
lined
county
up or
going.
did not line up
Okay.
with the first
Yeah.
proposal, it's just, I just would see
There's a
some value
comparison
in
there that would be
yeah.
valuable. I see your point.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking, but, yeah. Thank you. Thank you for bringing that first step forward as an important talking point too. That's important.
Any other questions or comments on the status of that process? I just want to say I'm really grateful to the members of the Budget Advisory Committee for providing their counsel, because that's tremendously helpful in moving this forward, so. The only other couple things I have to note, the Housing and Redevelopment Authority has its next meeting tomorrow here in this room at 3 p.m. That's December 15th. That'll be the second meeting of the HRA, and its agenda will include consideration of a job description for the executive director that it plans to recruit, and then also a timeline for conducting that recruitment. So things are moving ahead full steam, and really excited, grateful to this board for its support, the creation of the HRA, and also for the HRA commissioners, who are just a really great crew and are going to do really great work for the community. Really excited about that. And then the last thing I'll mention is that we do have in the courthouse currently an exhibit that Attorney Hicken was able to secure for us called Why Treaties Matter. And it's a series of 20 posters that talk about Native American treaty rights, what they are and what they are not. Very informative, and I'm happy to say yesterday we had at least a couple different groups of students from ISD 166 come through to look at those posters. So I just wanted to invite the community to visit us here in the courthouse and take a look at that exhibit. It's very, very informative and thought-provoking. And County Attorney, if you want to add anything to that.
I'll just say that we put out a press release yesterday to make sure the word gets out. Shared it with ISD 166. I just emailed it to Great Expectations also. And we'll have this exhibit and through the end of December, and then it will go to Grand Portage Lodge and Casino for display there for a month before it goes back down to St. Paul. So yeah, it's a great exhibit. For those who can't visit it physically, there is a virtual exhibit at treatiesmatter.org that is also good. We've got half the exhibit on the bottom floor, or on the ground floor, and half the exhibit on the second floor.
Thanks for getting that for us.
Yes, yep.
Appreciate that.
Yeah, it's very impressive and very informative
Mhm.
and very important, so thank you.
And Mr. Chair, that's all I have for today.
All right, any questions, Commissioner Saulson?
Our discussion of the capital improvement brought me back to, I know we had authorized funds to move forward, and we had a consultant coming in to help us put together our management plan, the vision, mission, vision, values, and things, and try to pull that together with our employees.
Yeah.
In time of COVID, were we able to make that work?
So I've backburnered that because there have been so many other things going on.
Okay.
But I do.
Well, and I knew we had a lot of things come up. I knew we had done this earlier, but just for some reason that fired a neuron in my brain
Yep.
that made me want to get an update.
It's still on the agenda.
Okay.
It's just, yeah.
Yeah, because I knew we were juggling times with the consultant that was going to come and assist
Correct.
us too.
Yeah,
Okay,
that's still on the agenda.
very good. It's important. I just wanted to make sure we hadn't lost it. Thank you.
Thank you for asking. Any other questions for Administrator Yorkie this morning? Okay. That moves us down to, thank you, Administrator Yorkie.
Thank you.
That moves us down to item 8, employee concerns, commissioner concerns. Item 8A is commissioner reports, meeting updates. Any reports or updates from commissioners?
Mr. Chair?
Yeah, Commissioner Sullivan.
I just wanted to share with all the commissioners and also our community that yesterday I attended the Cook County Council on Aging. And it's a very small organization. They have 3 employees and 1 person for contracted services 2 days a week. And they are in need of a cook. They are struggling to fill that position. There's going to be a posting that will come out this Friday in the Cook County News Herald and will also be out on Boreal. It's a position for 5 days a week, but they are in desperate need of somebody that has that Serve Safe certification through the state of Minnesota. And they're really struggling right now as they look forward to their 2022 budget. The cost of food has increased so dramatically, and they keep the costs of the meals they serve really low. They're looking at a $92,000 deficit for their 2022 budget, and their total budget is only $221,000. So I want our community to be aware that this is a place that is in need right now of not only additional staff, but any donations that can be made to this organization. So we need as a community to come together to help feed our seniors who are participating in that program. And right now, there were 75 to 80 people getting fed every day. And it's an important place for our seniors to connect with one another as well as to eat. So just wanted to get that word out.
Thank you, Commissioner Sullivan. Any other reports or meeting updates from commissioners? No, so I'll move on to item 8B, meetings to note. Tomorrow, and here we have it as 8 a.m., but I believe it was changed to 9 a.m. Okay, thank you. So that'll be at 9 a.m. Grand Portage.
And is that open to the public, or is that a just, that's us and the tribal council? Do you know?
Well, my understanding is we'll have a quorum. I don't know that we'll all be able to attend, but we're planning on a quorum, so then it would be open to the public.
Gotcha.
Yes.
Understood.
My understanding is we're going to have some carpooling potentially
Correct.
for commissioners here at the courthouse.
Yep. So 8 o'clock.
8 a.m. right here, or B Square.
And where is this taking place?
At
Is
the
it that-
RTC. Yep.
Yeah. I guess I don't know where that is exactly. Is that the
So,
lodge or not the lodge?
it's not at
but
the lodge or
the log
casino.
cabin? Or
So, no, it's not the
Oh,
log cabin.
Stevens Road, I think.
Well, it is, it's Stevens Road. It is a log cabin. So if you go 61, you pass the lodge and casino, and you continue on,
Yep.
it's going to be, you're going to turn right, top of the hill. There's a
Okay.
stop sign
Yep.
coming in from the lakeside, and you're going to turn there on Stevens Road and continue downhill. It'll be on your right.
Thank you. And then Community Leadership Committee, December 16th at 7 p.m. There's the Zoom link there. That'll be virtual. Again, anticipating a quorum, so public is welcome. And correspondence and memos, item 9, we have the lodging tax, again, pretty out of this world, and the sales tax as well. And it just kind of tells us what we're already feeling in the community as far as lots of happenings. And I'll move on to item 10, recognition of staff. We have December anniversaries. Ben Hallberg and the sheriff, 17 years. Julie Kinney and PHHS, 8 years. Diana Lindquist, Land Services, 8 years. Allison McIntyre, PHHS, 9 years. Lindsay Milkey in the sheriff's office, 17 years. Catherine Oatrup, sheriff's office, 1 year. And Lisa Sorley, highway department, for 13 years. Thank you all, the staff, for your years of service. We've got both some long years in there, some mid, and some freshies. So I appreciate all of them for the service that they bring to our community. And then we have our promotion of KathyAnn Travis to attorney paralegal and / victim witness coordinator. So congratulations and thank you as well for your service to our community. Anything else from commissioners as a last thought? Otherwise, I'll entertain a motion here to adjourn.
Nobody wants to.
I will make the motion to adjourn.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Hawkins. We do have a motion and support from Commissioner Swallowson. Appreciate both of those. Any further discussion? Hearing or saying none. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passes unanimously. We are adjourned. Have a wonderful day, everyone.